Hey everybody, me again, and today I want to talk about a vintage wide-angle lens that I recently picked up. The QMB version of the Zeiss Distagon 25mm f2.8. It's actually filming right now.
Garbage.
It was originally introduced in 1961 and has remained on the market largely unchanged except for the housing and the coatings until recent years. Known for its close focus abilities, general sharpness, low distortion, and build quality, it's a true gem. Now, if you've been following this channel, you probably know that I've been on a long journey through vintage lenses trying to build a mixed personal set. And one of the last focal lengths that I still need to dial in is the 24-ish millimeter. So I've been buying all of the ones that I can find with amber and purple coatings. So when I was looking through eBay and saw this lens, I was a bit surprised. Many versions of this lens all have green in the coatings, including the popular T-Star version, but this one did not. I noticed that it didn't have the T-Star marking on it at all, so I immediately turned to Google and was disappointed to find not much information about the different versions of this lens. So I reached out to somebody better than Google, the infamous Dan Fox. If you know or chat with Dan, you know he's a swell fellow with tons of knowledge about all sorts of different lenses, and verified that this version did in fact not have any green in the coatings. I mentioned a few moments ago that this lens went through some changes as time passed, and one of those changes were the coatings. This lens has at least 4 versions, this one being the pre-T-Star coating version and has a QMB mount. Now, I'm not sure exactly which versions came out when, but from what I've seen, all of the versions before the T-Star version did not have green in the coatings. There seems to be 3 versions of this lens pre-T coatings, the original all-silver housing version, the HFT Rolly version, which I believe was made in Singapore, in this version. This version has no HFT marking on the front ring, has a QMB mount, and is marked with a Made in East Germany stamp instead of Made in Singapore like the HFT version. I went to my favorite Facebook group, Vintage Lenses for Video, and asked if anybody had any flare samples and received this picture in the comments. How crazy and beautiful, right? So I knew I had to have it. The problem was, and still is, this lens is quite rare. When one finally popped up, I bought it without hesitation and then eagerly waited by my mailbox for it to arrive. When it did, I was sad to see that it had a fair bit of haze in the rear group, which was luckily easy enough to get to and clean, but the focus was also pretty stiff. Now, I'm no slouch in terms of fixing up lenses though, so I took it apart to clean and lubricate, and dearest was it a very tricky lens. Anyways, got it back together, so let's finally talk about this lens's image. First and foremost, the flares. No green. Hooray! The ray flares are definitely there and in charge, but stop the aperture down a bit or use a lens hood and you can control them pretty well. The lens is decently sharp wide open for normal focus ranges and just a bit softer as you reach infinity, which is par for the course for most lenses when wide open. The colors are nice, and the bloom from really bright highlights wide open feels organic and is soft and is absolutely gorgeous. It has better contrast in backlit situations than many other vintage wides. It has 6 aperture blades. It's low breathing, but unfortunately does have a fairly short focus throw. Chromatic aberrations are extremely minimal, and the bokeh is generally beautiful, although just a tiny bit busy at very certain times, but I really like it honestly. I immediately converted mine from the QMB mount to an EF mount through a cheap kit on eBay from China. It was about 15 bucks. Although adjusting for infinity focus was definitely a bit annoying, as I had to disassemble the whole front of the lens again to adjust it. There's also a small piece on the conversion mount that I had to remove to allow the pin that's back there to move, and I'm not quite sure why they even include that little piece on there, honestly. Here's how I did mine. I'll show you. If you have any questions or anything about this lens, holler at me down below. Have a great day.